thank you for asking me about failure and how that has changed my life and a specific example. I'll give you two examples. One is when I started investing in startup companies and technology. I will say that I probably failed a lot. I made a lot of bad investments. And there's an investor who said, how do you make good investments? Well, you have to have a lot of experience. Well, how do you have a lot of experience? Well, you make a lot of bad investments. And so that's sort of the reality, which is you have to make a lot of bad investments before you know what to see, before you get the pattern recognition, as they say in venture capital. So I made a lot of bad investments, and it's very sad because you are so invested in these companies and these founders. You have money, the LPs or the people that back you have agreed with you, and then they fail, and you're part of the reason why, because you didn't see the vision, you didn't know how to help them. There's a lot of reasons. And so, I remember that very clearly because people always ask me, so Bob, how did you get all these great investments? It's like, well, I made a lot of bad investments first before I realized what a good investment was. But to be more specific, I've actually had a lot of failure. It's just that failure and success are the same thing to me in a lot of ways, and that failure actually helps you grow. Success sort of makes you, I don't want to say it dulls the edge, because you're not as hungry sometimes when you succeed. When everything comes so easily, you're not that hungry. But when you fail, you want it that much harder. You're willing to do so much more to make sure that you never feel that again. So in some ways, you sort of want to fail a little throughout your life. And that means you're actually trying really hard, one. And two, that you're actually doing things that are uncomfortable. If you're doing things that you only succeed at, it's not going to be an interesting life. But you have to be okay with that. So for me, another example is actually when I was in China, I was working for a Chinese company. And it was really difficult because I was working all my colleagues were Chinese. I was working on translating documents from English to Chinese and then doing financial models. And so my voice is breaking a little because it's very painful because it was so difficult. My first language is not Chinese, it's English, and I learned Chinese speaking with my family. But when you're in an environment where it's business and it's a financial company and all these things are on the line, it was so difficult to get really smart really quickly on something so esoteric. To say the least, I actually got fired from that job. I actually got fired because I wasn't going fast enough. I wasn't thinking about all these things that the company really wanted me to do. And that was really difficult because it was one of my first jobs out of college. I thought this was it. I was a failure in life. And not only that, but what was I going to do with my life at this point? I got fired. I was in China. I have to go against all these other people who are smart, who are willing to work for less than me. It was really hard. But one of the things I figured out was, what do I want to do with my life? It really helped focus me on the things I didn't want to do with my life. And so in some ways it was a learning experience rather than a failure. But it was really difficult. Like I said, I've gone through all those issues where people have been at the lowest of lows. And then when I came back, afterwards, I did get another job in China. It did work out, but then I decided to move back to the US. And one of the hardest things was trying to find a job as a young adult in New York. I was off cycle. I was, my background in Chinese finance wasn't that respected. And there was a host of reasons why no one should have hired me. And a lot of people didn't hire me. I went through so many no's. And, but I got lucky. I literally say I got lucky in that one of the companies that I applied for actually came through a recommendation from a friend. So going back to the network, literally it was a network from a friend at school that said, hey, this recruiter is great. You should chat with him. I chatted with him. He walked me through how to think about the finance interviews, worked with me to be a better candidate. It worked out for both the company and myself because I worked there for 7 years. And it was a great experience for me. And he was the right person to sort of bridge that gap. But I got lucky. And now that recruiter is actually a good friend of mine. And we talk all the time. So it's worked out in the end, but it took a lot to get there. And it's staying optimistic, but seeing failure as a learning tool rather than a mark on your life that makes you seem like a worse person.